think for some, when you're actually applying for the job itself, there's a section for language. So maybe you can also take advantage of that. Like just put English and also speak, I also speak French. And because they usually ask you about fluency levels or if you're a native speaker and stuff like that. So in the job application, there's also a section like that. I just let's add that.
Even in the field of public health, my field of public health, if you are able to speak Spanish language, you literally would find it easier to get a job, because of the fact that you can not just regardless of the specific role you're applying to, maybe as an epidemiologist or a community education specialist or health education person, you highlight your language skills on your resume, especially if the job you're applying to is paired with cultural fluency. One of the other major languages outside English being the main language in America, one of the other language that is very, very popular here is Spanish. People who are very fluent in Spanish and have a deep understanding of Latin American markets and Latin American culture, they have a very great advantage in getting jobs in multiple sectors.
Marketing is another sector. You guys have highlighted a few: healthcare, customer service. Marketing is also another huge sector where language barriers is also very important, or language, the choice of language that you speak can also help you a lot, because you are going out there to speak to people about products. So if people can't understand what you're saying, how are you going to make a sale? So basically that's how he got a job, because he could already speak French, and he also had a background in marketing. So pretty much, he had an additional advantage because he could speak two languages. Though I know a lot of Canadians also speak French.
As an F1 student, you are on OPT. As an OPT, you're technically still on F1.
You're still on F1, not
technically. You're still on F1. You are still on F1. And so you are still under the restrictions.
Yes.
You
can't work, you can't even do anything outside your job of study. Your course of study.
Yeah, pretty much. However, some things that you can do, if you may not be able to, you can be a part of a business, but you are not managing and controlling the business.
Welcome to today's episode of the Mark Blennis podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to us. Welcome to the podcast. We are looking forward to another exciting episode of the Mark Blennis podcast. And we hope you've been having a great time with us. Today's episode, we'll be looking at how you can use your culture and background to be able to break into the US market, either as an entrepreneur or even in terms of job search. In past episodes, we looked at cultural language barrier. We looked at language barrier as one of the challenges that needs to be overcome in order to be able to get into the US market. We also look at credentialing, where we have degrees or certificates or transcripts that are in different standards compared to the US that needs to be adjusted. Sometimes this is done for students at the point of admission, but some institutions too want to see you are converted to the US standard using WES or other credentialing agencies as well. Another important factor that we mentioned is making sure that your OPT, that's optional practical training, the job that you get for your OPT aligns with what you studied, because this is very crucial for your OPT to be valid, given the USCIS requirements in order to be able to continue to stay legally within the country. And we're looking forward to today's episode. We're going to dive more into trying to create a job for yourself in the US, trying to create a business, to put it properly, for yourself in the US, which is a lot of people have been able to do that. There are amazing stories, amazing people been able to come into the US whether as F1 or non-F1, but being able to then create businesses that serve them, serves the country, serves the world, even as the case may be. So it's going to be a great session for us today, and you're welcome once again. I'll hand over to Blessing to take us down the great road of entrepreneurship and cultural advantages that we can employ in the US.
All right, thank you so much, Annie, and good morning to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're listening or watching. We appreciate you for joining us again on this on another episode. And like Annie said, today we want to focus on how immigrants use their power, how immigrants use their power through their cultural knowledge, to develop a career advantage. How you can, as an immigrant, develop a career advantage, maybe in your job, or being an entrepreneur, starting your own business as an immigrant. Because if whether you're not, being an immigrant in the United States of America is a very, very powerful advantage, is a very, very powerful tool. You have something that so many others do not have. And it is very, very important that you are able to use that, your own of some of the things you can do, and people who are already in the space that are taking advantage of such opportunities, that is open to every single one of us, who are in the United States as immigrants. Now, strategically, one of the things you can do as an immigrant is to leverage multilingual skills. You leverage your multilingual skills. There are so many industries, where they always need people who can speak other languages or outside English. In the United States of America, English is the official language. English is the main language that is being spoken. However, as we all know, America is a melting pot, and so many people from different countries are here. And depending on the states that you live, you go to some states and you find out that in some cities or some locales, you find a clove of immigrants. You find a clan, like a clan, or specific groups of people, maybe who speak specific languages or coming from specific countries. For example, in the state of Minnesota, in Minneapolis, they have a huge Somali population in Minneapolis, a huge population of people from Somali, and it's, in fact, they are so powerful. They are so much involved in a lot of businesses in in Minneapolis. They are involved, and not just Minneapolis, as a city in Minnesota, but some other cities within the state, that you find a lot of them who are involved in different aspects, even in the politics. Actually, one of the Congress members, House of Representative members, Representative Ilan Omar, she's originally from Somalia, born in Somalia, and before she immigrated, into the U.S., and now she's a Congress member. So there is, and then another example, go to Texas. Texas is one state with different enclaves of immigrants. There are some areas in Texas that you'll find a lot of Nigerians, and I think Houston and Dallas is are cities where you'll find a lot of Nigerians. In the state of Texas, there are so many Nigerians as well in Atlanta, Atlanta, Georgia. Of course, you find Nigerians everywhere, but we're looking at specific cities where you find a significant number of immigrants, maybe specific population or people from a particular place, from a particular country, in those cities. So if you find yourself living in cities like that, how can you take advantage of that? you don't have a job, you're looking for a job, you're trying to get something to do, and you are living in a city where people, you are living people, within that speaks the same language as you or the same culture as you, a lot of them live in the same community. How can you take advantage of that to advance yourself economically and financially? And or if you can either use maybe that opportunity to start a business like I said earlier, or if it is a job that you want to apply for, you can use that advantage, that cultural knowledge, and try to highlight it. You highlight your language skills on your resume, especially if the job you are applying to is paired with cultural fluency. One of the other major languages outside English being a main language in America, one of the other language that is very, very popular here is Spanish. People who are very fluent in Spanish and have a deep understanding of Latin American markets and Latin American culture, they have a very great advantage in getting jobs, in multiple sectors. Especially in the healthcare. You go to hospitals and they will always need someone who can interpret, somebody who can interpret, maybe in the Spanish language and sometimes maybe French. For example, people coming from, they have people that coming from Haiti, a lot of Haiti population, are in the US, as a result of the war, and the war and the gang related issues and economic issues going on in Haiti. The government created an opportunity for them to be able to come into the United States on temporary protection status. So there is a lot of Haitians, in America, and many of them, I think, outside the Haitian Creole language that they speak, they also speak French. French is their other main language. So people who speak French, are able to provide services, customer service or just interpretation service, for those who are, from Haiti or other French-speaking countries. Like I said earlier, those who speak Spanish language as well, they are able to also serve. They're able to serve, individuals who live in the U.S. that need such service.
Yeah,
So,
blessing. Just to
yeah,
add to what you're saying in terms of being bilingual, multilingual, as the case may be,
right.
this applies to I've seen job descriptions, for pharmacists, for even doctors, where they're like, preferably, you can speak Spanish or French. In fact, some actually like require, it's not preferable, depending
Yeah.
on, in like think Florida, some of those, just depending on where the hospital is located, that
Mm,
can be, like a benefit in that case. A lot of the should I say border states,
yeah.
or depending on the inflows that they have, they I remember one pharmacist mentioning that even within the US during the winter months, you see a lot of inflows of older people to the south. So they have like a
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6 months where basically the demographic of the people changes. Like
Yeah.
the mix
Within that
of the
period.
people
Yeah.
that they are seeing changes. So be understanding those and also being able to potentially leverage that, as as the case may be with someone's aligning with someone's background can be helpful as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very, very helpful. Um, especially like you said, a state like Florida, you have a large Cuban population there, Puerto Rican population, people from Venezuela, and mostly Latin America. So they have a large population of people, who of those specific groups who live in Florida, even in Texas. There are in Texas, I think it's mostly people from Mexico because of the proximity. Mexico is literally next to Texas, so that's that specific population, need is always there for people that are able to speak, that are very fluent in Spanish language. Even in the field of public health, my field of public health, if you are able to speak Spanish language, you literally would find it easier to get job, because of the fact that you can not just regardless of the specific role you're applying to, maybe as an epidemiologist or a community education specialist or health education person, whatever role it is within public health field that you're trying to occupy, if you have that advantage of speaking the Spanish language, um, it's a huge help. It is a huge boost when applying for jobs. So yeah, so leveraging multilingual skills is very, very helpful, in healthcare, like I said, also in customer service. There is a lot of customer service roles that always require that, or that's, that you can take advantage of, or you might be able to get a job in when you are able to speak a second language, mostly French, like I said before, or Spanish. Now, depending on the place, if you speak other languages, you might still be able to get the customer service role. Now, if you're serving, especially like I mentioned earlier, in the state of Minnesota, in Minneapolis, with a large population of Somalians, businesses who are serving, those population or those group of people may require, customer service agents or representatives, who can also speak those languages, international.
Yeah, I was blessing before you continue. I just wanted to add, I don't know if you're still speaking on the language or you're moving.
Yeah, I'm still on it.
Okay, I just wanted to add about cultural norms beyond language. So let me let you finish, then I'll add to it.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
before you guys go, so just to I've been listening to what Blessing said, and I think it makes a lot of sense because I kind of have a personal experience with that. Like the firm I work with is a multinational, so you have divisions in different countries, in the US and also in the neighboring countries like Canada. And in Canada, French is a very major, one of the major speaking, one of the major languages that is
Mhm.
big there. So I know of somebody that's actually African, that actually immigrated to Canada, just as we came to the US through school. He had an additional advantage because before even coming to Canada, he could speak French already. So once he was done with school and he needed to look for a job, so it went straight into marketing. So marketing is another sector. You guys have highlighted a few: healthcare, customer service. Marketing is also another huge sector where language barriers is also very important, or language and the choice of language that you speak can also help you a lot because you're going out there to speak to people about products. So if people can't understand what you're saying, how are you going to make a sale? So basically, that's how he got a job because he could already speak French, and he also had a background in marketing. So pretty much, he had an additional advantage because he could speak two languages. Though I know a lot of Canadians also speak French generally. Just wanted to add that. So,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. 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 Yeah. That's very, very helpful. And just to wrap it up, on the multilingual skills, leveraging, like I said earlier, you can take advantage in the healthcare sector, customer service, international business. You find a lot of people working for airlines, different airlines, and as a result of the fact that they speak, multiple languages, or there is a need for the specific languages that they speak. Then tech support, it's also an area where um, needs always arise for individuals who can speak multiple languages, even in government, as well, and in with NGOs. So those are areas that you can actually look at when you're looking for a job or trying to find a career, and see how you can use your knowledge, your cultural knowledge, your language, as an advantage to push yourself further. Annie, you wanted to make a point earlier.
Oh, yeah, it's like an extension of the cultural competence, looking at cultural norms beyond just the language, where you have situations where a lot of IT companies, for instance, they have, their subsidiaries in India, and what a common trend in recent years is also with pharma, having companies in Mexico, essentially looking for areas where there can be high skill, low income, low wages, looking for those kind of areas. So you have pharma also doing that in recent years. So besides speaking the language, you understand things like, maybe it's a culture where people like to play first before they talk about what they need, or people, the culture like, just tell me what you need and keep it
Yeah.
moving in. Maybe you need to greet with a lot of greetings, like either in emails or
Yeah.
even when you're talking, or you just say hi and just keep it moving. All those little things, things that are that relates with cultural norms. There are other examples, I'm sure, but these things can help someone to relate in terms of whether you're building your business, or getting the job and actually doing the job, to be able to demonstrate value within the job itself. So I just wanted to mention that, extension of beyond the language itself, the
Yeah.
cultural norms as well.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. Great point. That's very a very very valid point that you made. Right there. And in addition to that, one of the things that can also be done as an immigrant, maybe you're looking for a full-time career opportunity, or you're just looking for some kind of side gig, an extra income or something you can do on the side, to make, an extra income as an immigrant in the US. You can create a culturally informed content, creating culturally informed content creation. It's one of the biggest, is or going into
Is,
one of the
is
biggest
that
industries.
is that what we're doing right now?
Correct.
I think I'm just trying to buttress the point, and
Yeah.
that's exactly like the gig that we're doing now, which gives you like you said, the side hustle in addition to your main job.
Yeah, correct. So, creating content, can lead to brand partnerships, and, you can get speaking gigs or even consulting opportunities, and what are the things you can do? You can start a podcast, like, Akohi just said, it's what we're doing. Our podcast, Mark Blenick podcast, is geared towards, telling our stories as immigrants in the United States, and helping other immigrants to be able to navigate, life here in America. So you can also start, something similar. You can create a YouTube channel, you can create a blog, and write, about immigration or, cultural issues here in the United States, specific to your own culture, regardless of what country you're from. You can write newsletters, to discuss your cultural perspectives, immigrant stories, or look for other niche topics, so that's a lot of opportunity, a lot of opportunity that you can actually take advantage of, or for something else that you can do, simply because you have that language advantage, you have that cultural advantage, you know.
Yes.
Um,
So blessed. I'm sorry to intrude. I just to
yeah,
highlight this for the people listening, because me, I'm trying to listen now at some. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody coming into the US, or somebody that is already probably schooling in the US and trying to take advantage of what you just said. So is it that you have to? I know we've highlighted some sectors where possibly you can start looking for jobs, where language and having an additional language can be an advantage. So just walk me through the process of being graduating right from school, and I can speak French. So I did like special circumstances when I'm applying, or you just have to go with the job descriptions. Like you just have to look at the jobs that actually include that as an additional skill.
well, sometimes, fine, if maybe someone coming as you're graduating from school and about to get into the job market, you can speak French, you can speak Spanish language, you can speak other languages, and you're applying specifically for a job. Now, depending on your field, maybe in the healthcare sector, in tech, in engineering, medicine, nursing, depending on the field that you're trying to apply to, you they may not specifically put it in the job description that, or maybe this person, if you can speak this language, is an advantage. Like Annie said earlier, some jobs they will always specify, like, okay, if you have this language, then you can be able to, you have an advantage, so. But generally, if you look at the job description and you think that this job, my language might give me an advantage, then the resume that you're submitting, you can, or you should indicate it on the resume that you speak this specific language. On the language, you can just create a section for languages and include English and the other language, and then also specify at what level, intermediate, or expert, or just beginner level. So, but if the language that you were born with, your main language, and of course you're an expert, so you read and write in that language. So you are trying to use that as a way to give yourself, a head start, to say the least, when they are looking at all the different resumes for the job. And sometimes, when you are applying as well, when you look at the job description and the people or the customers or the clients that are going to be serving, you can, in your cover letter, you can always specify how the second language that you speak can all actually be very, very helpful for this job position. The employer or the person that actually posted that job position may not have actually thought about it, or may not have actually thought about the fact that, oh, maybe somebody who speaks this specific language would be a better fit for this position. In your cover letter, you can actually put that, that because I'm able to speak this language, I would be a better fit for this position, and this is how I can actually help, to achieve the goals of the organization because of my, cultural or language advantage. So that's how I think someone can actually, coming in from school, and that's how I think how I think, an immigrant can actually put himself forward, and how it can be very helpful. I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, Mark, I think that's a good question, and I like the answer Blessing gave. I'm also thinking potentially before maybe the person graduates, maybe if there's opportunity for conference or internship, or just trying to network on LinkedIn, potentially someone might be able to gain more background access into what the job is like, what it might need with people within the company or within the field, and showcase their own background and their experience. Sometimes people there are situations where what I've seen is the job needs solution. They are thinking of something beyond what they already have. They already have a team, but they're thinking if someone just has a knowledge of something beyond what we already have. So if you now have the training, but you're like, okay, maybe the cultural competence or the language or whatever the case is, if you're able to let them know you have that, even if they sometimes, like Blessing mentioned, they don't know what it is. Sometimes when it's very clear, they will state it like, you have to speak both. But sometimes it's like, maybe we need, maybe we don't, or maybe they don't. It's not very clear. So that way the person is able to, maybe I like that okay, I can, or maybe just say, I've worked in low resource environment before, I'm able to use that, and this is what I did when there was a situation I was creative to solve this problem. And I'm looking forward to bring that creativity into using that background, just try and frame it in that way. So this is just framing it in a way that I can work in this way, I can be creative in this way, I can see solutions to a problem in different ways because of my background and experience. So I think that's another way to frame it too.
So thank you guys for crystallizing it, because I just wanted us to be able to put that out, especially for students, so that they can be able to clearly see how to go about that process. And just to add, I think when you're actually applying for the job itself, there's a section for language. So maybe you can also take advantage of that. Right? Just put English and also I also speak French, and because they usually ask you about fluency levels, or if you're a native speaker and stuff like that. So in the job application, there's also a section like that. I just let's add that. So let's say, so I don't want us to limit this to just F1 students, right? So let's say you are also an immigrant, but you're not coming to the route of school, right? Though I know you need a work authorization to be able to work regardless in the US. So I think this other part might be geared towards the entrepreneurship. I don't know if you're going to address that right after now, because
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want us to also crystallize that's the same process we just did for the student, for also for the guys that actually don't have that have the ability of going through the F1 route, but maybe they are coming in as investors.
If you don't like feeling lost but still want to move to the US, then tune into the Mech Blaney podcast show. Meet E&I, Blessing, and Akohi, your friendly guides to making the big move to the US. Whether you're dreaming of new opportunities or reuniting with family, we've got you covered. Our mission? To give you the tips, tricks, and insights you need to navigate the immigration process smoothly. So grab your headphones and get ready to embark on your journey with us. Welcome aboard.
That's the area I'm actually going to next. Cultural entrepreneurship. That's actually my next.
Did you create that word? Did you create that?
I've never heard of cultural entrepreneurship.
That's so the problem.
Nice job. Like,
because they create things.
we are coming up with stuff on the fly.
Yeah, cultural entrepreneurship is a thing. I mean, it's what we all know, but we probably just didn't.
Into words.
Yeah, it's what we all know. And what does cultural entrepreneurship mean? Opening a business that introduces food, fashion, art, wellness practices from your culture.
Yeah.
So you find people who have catering services, with, that are, for example, like with authentic, maybe West African or Nigerian dishes, or you find a wellness brand that is rooted in traditional practices,
Yeah.
from specific cultures. So as an individual, you can actually take advantage of that as well, right? For example, in Atlanta, we have African restaurants. You go to some restaurants like Ike's. You have what's the name of this place? Little Lagos, right? And a couple of other places, too. So in major cities, across the US, where you find a large group of maybe Africans or specific immigrants, you always find restaurants that are tailored to such people. Even in DC, for example, you'll find different restaurants that actually tailor to a lot of immigrants. You find restaurants that are tailored to, like, I think there's a place called Swahili Village, tailored to food mostly for people from East Africa, and also you find I think the Continent. I think that's the name of the restaurant, if I can remember. I think it's the Continent. Me not doing adverts for them, but
They pay you.
Yeah.
You don't need to remember their name.
I've been to the place, and they are really nice food. In that place, cater to a lot of West African food. I mean, of course, as an American, you can always go there. If you go there, you still find something you can eat, maybe an American food, but majority of the food that are in this place, in these restaurants, are catered towards specific cultures.
Yeah.
Maybe African, or you have a lot of Mexican restaurants, that caters to Hispanic related dishes. So as an individual, you want to actually try. Oh, I want to try, food from West African. I want to try food from, Hispanic origin, or food from the Middle East. You always, you will always find a restaurant, to go to. So as an entrepreneur, you're thinking about, what can I do? How can I, break into this market? How can I take advantage of this opportunity? I'm not a student. I'm just an immigrant here. I have authorization to work. I want to start my own business. This is an example of what you can do. Fashion is another thing. You find people who are producing clothing and selling clothing that are geared towards specific cultures. You go to sometimes you go to the mall and you'll find, is it dashiki? I think dashiki, that's what they call it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this African prints, top in different stores. So some people, they produce that, maybe, or they make the clothes here, or sometimes when you go to Amazon, you even find it on Amazon or Shopify. Some of our clothes, Agbada and Iru and Buba, the Ishiagu for the Igbo which is like typical for Igbo cultures. So almost anything or any culture or tribe that you're trying to find specific fashion or dressing, that is geared towards them, you will always find it. But it doesn't mean that the market is saturated. You can still play a role. You can still be able to find a space in that market. You may be living in a state that you don't find a lot of these opportunities. That is where you can come in. That is where you can take advantage or take an opportunity. And like, oh, in where I live, my city, we don't have people who are producing things like this. You can start it. You can start it and start introducing it to people, maybe at your place of work. You'll be surprised that a lot of Americans actually love or would love to participate or would love to be introduced to your culture. Maybe from your food, they would love to try your food. They would love to try your clothing. And you can, at some point you decide to start, monetizing it and making money. Maybe initially you may just give samples and like, oh, this is, some of our food, this is some of our clothes. And when you see that, okay, these people are welcoming it, then you open it up and, start monetizing it. So, and then you can also, you find arts, people, who are into different arts. There's a friend of mine that I know, she is into poetry. She is into poetry and she used from, I think that she's East African, and she does a lot of poetry speeches and events, based on African culture. Then you also have wellness practices, people doing, for example, those that do acupuncture, right? Acupuncture is something that is a practice based from Asia, right? It's an Asian, practice, something that's been done for thousands of years before now, but now it's becoming a mainstream thing where people go, and you go to different spas, and acupuncture is now one of the things that they ask you, if you would like to get it. So there's so many things that you can do. It's just for you to sit and think about it, like, okay, what niche can I go into? And then you look at your environment, your community where you are, and study the market and try to see how you can break into the market. Not just the environment alone, like I said, you can break outside your immediate community, outside your immediate environment. And that is where you don't even sometimes you don't need to have maybe a store or a shop or some specific location where your business is located if you're not able to afford it. Although later on, I think in the next episode, we're going to talk about, go further into that, like the opportunities that you can take advantage of if you don't have a lot of money, or if things you can do with, very low budget, as an immigrant. So we're going to talk about that in the next episode.
So I should just say that now. My head just light up. I always try to see it from the viewpoint of not being part of the podcast. So what are these? I don't know if you're going to address this, because what are the steps that you need to take? First of all, because I know to be in entrepreneurship in America, you can't just open a business. You might possibly need a business license. Like there might be some required checklists or some required steps that you need to be able to take. I don't want to extend the conversation, maybe just a little bit highlights of those. Then also, what sector do you think generally in terms of entrepreneurship as an African, where you have the biggest competitive advantage? Is it the food sector? Is it clothing? I know you mentioned something about clothing. I also know you mentioned something about awareness, which is maybe health industry or something like that. So where are the three main? Because I want to kind of drive our audience into, okay, so these are the areas where, let's say you're coming in, you have no clue where you need to focus on initially. This is where you have the biggest advantage. I don't know if you have that information, where you have the biggest advantage, where you can start with. That's one. And also maybe what are the steps that you need to take initially, even before you start thinking about establishing the business?
Yeah. So again, I wouldn't say, like I said, in the next episode, I really want to go fully into it yet. Okay. Where we're going to address, different entrepreneurship opportunities that you can easily go into with low budget. There's so many things you can do if you have big budgets, you know. But a lot of people coming into the country typically do not have such, big money, especially those that are just graduating from school and maybe going into career, or they want to start their own thing. They don't have that much money, but we're going to discuss about the different types of businesses that you can do as an immigrant with low budgets. But one of the things that I think is very, very common that you can actually do, that I would say is one area that is an easier niche to go into is food, catering. And you don't even have to open a restaurant. You can be doing a catering service from your home, right? And be serving people who live in your immediate community. If you are living in a Nigerian community, for example, as Nigerians, for example, we are always having one event or the other. We're always having a wedding or some, there's always a reason to have a party. And then you want to cater for, the large group of people, or the people that will be coming for your party or your event. So there are people that, they do catering business, and, we call them, like, of course, my family, we're always doing one thing or the other. We'll call people that always, that was like, oh, I need a pound or 2 pounds of jollof rice, 1 pound or 3 pounds of chicken, or moi moi, a 4 euro and assorted meats, anything you want, they will make it for you. They will produce it for you. So these people don't even have their own stores or their offices or restaurants. They just make this from their home, and then they can deliver it to you, or you go pick it up, and then you pay them. And they are always busy. All right. Now, talking about, so that's just one example. Now, I'll give other example, but initially, before I forget, I want to clearly address, you mentioned the point of how to get into, how to start a business, getting into that, business. Of course, getting into business, there are certain steps that you need to have. Number one, you want to make sure you're authorized to work in the United States and be able to do business. As an F1 student, you are on OPT. As an OPT, you're technically still on F1.
You're still on F1, not
you're still on You are still on F1.
Oh,
and so you are still under the restrictions.
Yes.
You
can't work. You can't even do anything outside your job or study. Your course of study.
Yeah, pretty much. However, some things that you can do, if you may not be able to, you can be a part of a business, but you are not managing and controlling the business. You can probably invest in a business, even as an F1 student, you can invest in a business, but you are not part of the everyday activities, in that business. You may just have a background role, because of the fact that your F1 visa, you have a lot of restrictions. And but for somebody who doesn't have, that kind of restriction, and then you have a working visa. You have employment authorization, or you're authorized to work in the United States, whether for a short term or a long term. It's left to you to decide. Then you would be, you are open more. You have access to be able to do, more of these things, and then have access to also be able to get funding. You're creating a business. You have to form your own business, whether as a self-employed person, or you are creating an LLC, or you are creating a partnership if you are working with multiple people. So everything, maybe in another episode we are going to dive deeper into these different levels or different structures for creating a business. And then because whatever structure you're taking or you're choosing, you want to make sure that it matches with your tax. You want to study the tax advantages and disadvantages for each one, and how each one can benefit you more. Then also, how access to funding. Because the key thing is you can creating a business, in the States, you're registered with the States, get your EIN. Number, and then which is that's your federal tax number that you need as a business owner. So it's always important that you have that, because that is how you are able to report your earnings to the government and pay your taxes, your necessary taxes at the end of the year. And then in the state that you live, you want to make sure that you're registered with the state, though you can be in Georgia, but your business is not registered under the state of Georgia. Some people, there's what they call the Delaware business registration. For specific reasons, people register, in Delaware because of the advantages that they have over registering in another state. So I'm going to explain, or we are going to go into another episode to talk more, about, all those different, the differences in, in the business registrations across multiple states in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Blessing, for that. I know you're going to address that in the next preceding episode. So that we I don't drag you too much about this. I just want to say, for me, guys, this has been very, very educative, because I won't say I'm not a business person, but you could tell from what Her Blessing was saying that he has some experience with entrepreneurship, because he has been doing it for quite a while. So, guys, I'm also just going to say, please remember to subscribe to our channel. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, because we have episodes that come out every week, and we are always willing to get feedback from you, to be able to know what kind of information that you actually want to hear from us. Then we can actually use that information to create topics and address those questions and concerns that you guys have moving forward. For me, I think this has been great. If any of you guys have any other thing you want to chip in, you guys can. But I think this has been fantastic. Listen.
Yeah, I think it's been a great episode. Learning about using what sometimes is perceived as a challenge, as things that make it impossible for you to maybe get a job or start a business, being able to flip that and try to make it work, because people have been able to do that, and we all have this what we come with from based on our background, and it's good to be able to have a conversation about ways to use that to further ourselves, to improve our career or advance ourselves financially, economically, and in multiple other ways as well. So it's been nice. Thank you very much, Blessing. We do hope you guys subscribe and like our pages, share our videos as well. Let us know what you'd like to hear from us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. See you in the next episode.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.